Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. From counting eyeballs to counting money in the bank, the OTT industry has been on a roller coaster ride in the last 5 years. And guess what? The party's just begun, guys. 90 million SVOD subscribers today, growing to about 200 million by 2024. A revenue of $2.5 billion, growing to about $4.5 billion in the same time. Content investments growing from $1 billion to $2.5 billion. Number of OTTs in the industry about 50, growing to about 70 and maybe more. The party won't stop. Ladies and gentlemen, I am ZUBIN DUBASH. I lead the OTT and other digital businesses for SHEMAROO. And I have the pleasure of moderating this fantastic panel aptly titled, Show Me the Money. Joining me today are a very eminent panel. Ali HUSSEIN, who's the Chief Operating Officer of EROS now. ABHISHEK Joshi, who heads marketing and the SVOD business at MX Player. GAURAV KANWAL, who's the Chief Revenue Officer of Z5. And in the next 30 minutes, we're all going to speak about the monetization of OTT, something that's been on the minds of every OTT in the industry. So let's start straight away. I'm going to pick up this conversation with ABHISHEK. ABHISHEK, we're talking about MX. MX started off with about an entire acquisition of MX Player, and that got you a good number of MAUs. Today we're talking about close to 300 million MAUs. You were always AVOD. And what actually transitioned you to start looking at SVOD from a industry and an individual's viewpoint? Let's start with that.
Hi everyone. Hi Zubin. A very good afternoon to everyone. Okay, let me correct you here on two counts. One, MX is still AVOD. It's not a complete SVOD platform. We will never be a complete SVOD platform. It is still AVOD. All my content is still on AVOD. Why did we do it? It's not because the entire world was going SVOD and hence we felt the need to do it. What we realized in the last couple of years, last year and a half, last 18 months, post-pandemic, was the consumer has lost the habit of watching ads on a web series. Because everywhere else and on everyone else, web series or premium content is behind a paywall, right? Except MX. And behind a paywall, there are limited or absolutely zero ads that they, that they have on web series content. So when we did a dipstick study and when we read our Play Store reviews and when we spoke to our consumers, the pain point was there are ads and which are hampering our viewing experience, which is the consumption experience. So across the world, entertainment SVOD or SVOD, as all of us know, is led by content, right? Everyone who goes the SVOD route puts content first. In our case, it is slightly different. In our case, it is a feature-based SVOD, which is an attempt to solve the genuine pain point of a consumer, which is advertising. So we went ad-free. So, for example, content X will always be available on AVOD and on SVOD. So if a consumer has to choose what he wants to watch and how he wants to watch it, with ads or without ads, it's his choice, because what we have realized in a number of years of experience in the entertainment space is we are nobody to choose on behalf of the consumer. You know, the consumer is the king, will always be the king. Let him or her choose what he wants to watch and how he wants to do it. And that is our endeavor, and that is how we chose to launch SVOD.
Great. One quick question there, ABHISHEK, is when you look at profitability of both models, ad and ad-free, does the content investment justify AVOD over SVOD?
See, we have just started, so I don't think I will be in the right position to answer this. Maybe you will. See, the way we have arrived at the pricing and the way we have arrived at the proposition of an SWOD offering to our existing consumer or even to our new consumers is a very simple math. What we have done is we have calculated the ARPU of an AWOD consumer. How much does he pay us by watching free content with ads? And hence the pricing has been decided for our SVOD offering. So it will always be an incremental revenue, but the idea never is to cannibalize our existing AWOD users. The idea is always to expand and fuel the top of the funnel.
Very interesting take on SVOD. I must say it's a very unique one, ad free versus ad. And we'll definitely want to see how that pans out in the months to come. Let me move the conversation now to Ali. Ali, we've seen, of course, a fantastic integration and a merger happening with STX a little over a year ago at EROS now. And of course, there's a lot of action happening both on the content side, creation side, distribution side. So tell us about what are the three big wins that have happened last year on the monetization and some new models that have emerged at EROS now.
No, thank you. Thank you, Zubin. Thank you, Rajika. Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to be a part of this Jerry Maguire team where you're talking about show me the money, right? So excited to be here with friends. I think the STX acquisition in kind of 2020 was more in terms of consolidation, more on the studio business, right? The digital business kind of remained independent of sorts because the larger group, other than EROS, now really doesn't have a significant digital play as such. But obviously with expertise coming now on a slightly more pan-global basis in terms of our relationships with the content fraternity, it allows us to create opportunities to create more global stories. It allows us to create more distribution touch points in global markets, right? So kind of giving so-called a South Asian player a kind of global footprint because we end up working with entities and partners around the world, right? And then that was a good kind of emphasis on trying to build an India company outside of India. So I think starting with that, some of our early successes on the international side have really doubled down or doubled up so much in the last, I would say, 9 to 12 months. So that's another important facet. We don't talk about monetization in isolation from an international perspective, but traditionally TV and theatrical was a very brick and mortar local business, right? But when you talk about internet and you talk about global distribution, there is no distribution is now democratized. So how do you kind of ensure that stories are being able to be told globally, right? And we've seen examples of shows that are not English in nature that have traveled around the world, and how is it that we're able to get a success story out of India? So I think some of the markets that we've entered, penetrated, some of the relationships that we have in the global markets is definitely a big kind of, I think, win for us. And we continue to kind of develop that in time to come. And I can talk about specific areas like we've launched markets like Poland, where not just the content, but also the interface will be available in Polish. So how do you kind of open up? China was a big market for us. We've got relationship with a couple of incumbents in the China market, and we're obviously kind of building upon that. So we've opened out international monetization and hence kind of showing the ecosystem some additional money. And that, again, from an ARPU perspective, the dollar net realization is a lot better rather than the rupee realization also because within India, we tend to be a little more cost optimized versus sometimes outside. And then that works better in our favor. So that's one good example. Another one is something that we speak about quite frequently, but I want to talk about it differently is we're going down kind of a cyclic route on TV. So we're going to see a lot of interesting kind of bundling happening, very similar to how you see it with the MSOs or the cable operators in terms of distribution, right? So whilst a large part of the economy would play within the so-called a la carte strategy where you're paying in isolation for services, you're going to see a significant mid-tail. We haven't come to the long tail as yet of so-called SVOD consumers that get into the bundle. Now, the interesting thing about this bundle is that this bundle is going to be cross-platform. It won't be restricted to televisions or IPTV services only or broadband services only. This is going to be a cross-platform bundle. And you're going to see that kind of be a lot more optimized for cost and kind of target a larger distribution set. It's anticipated we'll have a reach of anywhere between 150 to 200 million customers sitting in that middle belt, who will be first time kind of OTT adopters over the next 12, 18 months. So there are a couple of very interesting things that have happened already in that space, and you'll publicly also hear about it potentially before Diwali and right after. So I think those are a couple of the areas where we've worked on extensively in the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months, just to kind of build upon our prowess in terms of our niche or our kind of mass niche from a consumer association.
Great, Ali. Thanks for that. Some international expansion and bundling, as I hear it, for the middle of pyramid. Gaurav, let's move the conversation to yourself. Can you share a little bit about what's happening at ZEE5 with specific reference to how you're expanding both regional and mainstream Hindi? Gaurav, you're on mute here.
Yes. Thanks, Zubin, and good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be in the august company of other bearded men here, since all of us are, right? So yeah, see, Zubin, it's content, as said, customer is the king, content is the king. We've heard that a lot, many times, right? And at the end of the day, that's the hook. That's the hook that we all use to bring in people. So, there is the HSM market, but then the ever expanding market is, and where we see a lot of scope in terms of where we can get a lot more entrenched is the regional content, right? There is huge demand for original content that we're seeing, and that market in our mind is a little more starved than the HSM market for multiple genres. We've seen the HSM content come in multiple genres, from crime to thriller to rom-coms and other comedy shows. But then it's time for us to actually look at specific content which caters to that market in every possible genre that we've seen content being created in HSM. So that's something where we are seeing a huge amount of pull coming in from. And to Ali's point, one of the things that we're also looking at is the international expansion specifically for the South Asian diaspora, where being in a foreign country, they have an inherent need for content in their own mother tongue, right? So be it the other South Asian markets like Bangladesh, where of course a lot of Bangla content. So we're investing a lot in the in originals in Bangladesh market as well, with local stars as well. So that in itself becomes creates a new market for us in the first place, and we'll continue to invest in that kind of a content along with our usual investments in the HSM markets.
Great. So in your regional strategy, when you look at regional, would you look at original content creation for regional, or would you look at a quick and easy dubbing approach as such?
We would not want to rule out anything there, Zubin. We would look at original content. We would possibly look at big ticket acquisitions there. And at the same time, dubbing, there is a huge market for dub content as well. But I would not want to rule out anything at this point of time. I think we will go all three ways there.
Great. Okay, so let me come back to Abhishek. We've seen a lot of OTT consumption happening during the pandemic. And of course, I don't say it's over yet, but we are probably at the valley of it right now. During the last 18 months, the kind of consumption that OTT saw, people actually became addicts of it. So from a time when you were trying to do habit change to now being addicts and even willing to pay, how has the pandemic actually helped and probably been a catalyst? And how are you seeing it change now that things are unlocking? And are you seeing an impact on that? Or do you foresee an impact coming up there with both consumption and revenue?
Okay, let me take a step back, Zubin here. In the last 5 years, two big events has altered the life of the OTT video journey, right? One was when Jio launched. From 1 GB a month to 1 GB a day of consumption, that was a huge change. I mean that that all of us had witnessed the impact that ecosystem change can bring into a business. Then came the pandemic. I mean, unfortunate enough, but the OTT video entertainment did survive and did grow during the last 18 months. In fact, to an extent of about 350%. Because as somebody had said that the show must go on, right? Nobody stopped producing shows, nobody stopped launching shows, nobody stopped watching them. I wouldn't say yet that it has become a habit. I would say that we have just preempted and brought the change earlier. This was bound to happen, if not now, maybe in the next 2 years. This was supposed to happen, but it has accelerated to an extent where the small screen has become a screen of choice. It's not the second screen anymore. Now, if that change has happened, now it is our responsibility as the custodians of OTT digital entertainment to keep that change alive and to keep our consumers engrossed and entertained all the time. And that's a big ask. At the end of the day, good content will always find its consumer. You can't hold it back. Come what may, you can't hold it back. So the responsibility is much bigger on making good, valuable stories, and the entire game of telling stories has changed. I mean, we have come from a time of a 3-hour film to 8 episode, half an hour episodes. Now we have come to a stage of 15-second entertainment, right? I mean, the last 1 year, has given a ample boost and a spike to short video platforms. See, all of it is fine, but we need to understand one basic thing. There will only be one app visible at one time at one screen. It is like a television channel, right? On one screen, a consumer can watch only one channel. So who will that be? That will be defined by content. And yes, things are opening up, but I don't see it being an impact at all. Because it's like you reading a newspaper for the last 15 years and suddenly the newspaper becomes free, right? You don't end up reading it more.
Let me ask another question, Abhishek. Sorry, but they say that the biggest competition to OTT is time, is the 24-hour day. And maybe if I can add one more element is piracy. We'll come to piracy later. But if we are saying time is the biggest competitor to OTT consumption, and how do we challenge? And now that the pandemic is, or probably the unlockdown has begun, and people are going to be commuting, they're going to be at work, they'll have lesser time between meetings to go and watch their favorite shows. Where does that play a role in all of this?
But Zubin, let me take you back in time. That was our major advantage of being an OTT. I mean, if people have less time, they might not go to a cinema theater, or they might not watch television. I mean, the entire reason of an OTT existence was exactly what you just said. I mean, that advantage is still there.
So do you see it as a new normal in terms of consumption patterns? Like
absolutely. I mean, it is not a second screen anymore. It has become the first screen of choice.
Great, interesting. Gaurav, one question for yourself is, we've seen SVOD, AVOD, TVOD, PVOD, and every model emerging right now. PVOD, I call it partnership VOD, which is paid for by the partners. Tell me, why hasn't TVOD really picked up in India, if I may say so? Because we really don't have too many big case studies. I won't know, I'm not sure whether we could call Radhe a case study or even Kali Pili a case study. But the very fact that we tried TVOD in various models, like SHEMAROO tried TVOD on a week-on-week basis. We came in and we, in fact, were the first ones to launch it bang in the middle of the pandemic last year. Uh, Tell us something about TVOD as a model, and would you ever look at it again, or are you looking at it in a way to kind of drive monetization?
Sure. So, you know, so when we look at it, right, we were primarily an AVOD market. SVOD is, we're still scratching the surface on SVOD, right? We are still to expand a lot more as compared to the more mature markets in the West, right? And we're getting there. TVOD is absolutely, while if SVOD is it is in infancy, right? TVOD's barely born right now, right? And TVOD from a very fact has to be for ticket properties, right? Like for example, when if we take a parlance from the physical world, right? You pay for a movie or you pay for a concert, right? Those are the kind of things where for a normal weekly kind of a thing, it feels more like a tax that you're paying, right? When it's TVOD, right? But the moment you get into a very large big ticket property, which is extremely exclusive, is where you are willing to pay that premium over and above the entire thing, right? So it's going to be a little bit of a test and trial that we'll have to do, and all of us have to do those tests and trials across the board, to look at what kind of properties is where we can command a premium there, over and above the normal subscription, and what is it that it's basically, and taking another one from a software perspective, right? In the SaaS world, people expect that whatever new feature comes to a software has to be a part of my subscription. So yes, but the moment you come encounter an upgrade, right, a major movement, that's where you are willing to pay a premium, because there is a massive change there. So we'll have to look at some models that do we, with new features and new content, do we up our SWOT pricing, or do we sell it on TVOD? So a little bit of a test and trial is something that, and probably we'll figure it out in the months to come.
Sure. It's interesting you mentioned SaaS, because what we do for our B2B business on SHEMAROO Me is something called CAS, which is content as a service. And we sell that as a solution to lots of partners. We've got over about 100 partners who work with us, or probably we give content to in some form. We integrate our app inside their app, and that kind of a partnership is what we look at from a monetization point of view. Uh, that apart, of course, we just for the benefit of all, we just recently launched, about 6 months ago, we launched a regional foray into Gujarati, and we've been seeing some really good traction because we've just gone a heavy up strategy in that particular market. So whether it's web series, whether it's blockbusters by the Salman of the Gujarati world, or whether it's Nataks, which Gujus just love to the moon and back. We've been offering that, and we offer it at a promise of one new piece of content every week. And we've seen some decent traction coming up there, interesting traction. Uh, it's early days, of course, very early days, but the promise has been accepted beautifully, and we're looking forward to some really good traction coming forth.
We look forward to the results of that.
Definitely. Let me ask Ali. We've all been looking at OTT, and we keep comparing it to, and we look at OTT churn rates, as we keep calling that big buzzword of churn, because we somewhere know that telecom has this buzzword called churn, and so does banking in some way. But those are, as I call them, homogeneous services. So you move from one telco to another, you're not going to get a sea change of a service as such. You're going to get the same service. But when it comes to OTT, you're as good as your last piece of content, literally. So there is actually no control on churn. And for that matter, I would probably say people are content loyal and not platform loyal. So where do you see the value or the hack in terms of making people stay on board and come back for more regularly and stay loyal to your platform?
Zubin, actually don't completely agree with you, right? I know whilst a lot of kind of believers in the so-called video business believe that it's this classic debate about content is king, and what is distribution or technology have to do, but we haven't talked about technology at all, right? So I think there are two facets to something that we haven't addressed in this discussion today, right? Obviously, content definitely is important, but unlike your TV channel, it's not just going to be about I don't like this show and hence I'm not going to watch it, right? So there is enough and plenty of examples, just again early days, but say interactive content, or what does AR or VR play, right? You can't have AR VR on your satellite screen or a movie theater unless they're hooked up that way. So there is going to be immersive content that will come in eventually, and which will become mass market hopefully 3 to 5 years down the line. And then it's not even a comparison about is this just another screen. So I think technology plays a very important role in terms of both the user experience and also in terms of features that it's able to add. Case in point being, we kind of launched a small service where we did things like dynamic subtitling for our films and our content in the Middle East in Arabic, right? And that saw almost like a 4x jump in terms of consumption. And mind you, this wasn't done by humans. This was completely machine-generated subtitles, right? So I'm just giving you an example of how you use technology to be able to enhance a consumer experience, which actually yields direct results, right? And I think somewhere each of us, right, whether it's MX, whether it's EROS now, other brands would have to kind of figure out in terms of what's a wraparound comprehensive brand strategy, right? Because you can't purely have a transactional nature. So it's almost like what's the kind of culture you want to create? What's the specific relationship with the customer? Because this is going to be slightly more personal. Because unlike the television, we will have a lot more personalized experience because you're generating a fairly evolved recommendation engine, right? So you understand the customers a little better. So how is it that you're curating those experiences to be able to have enhanced viewing experience, or almost recommend a series or a movie for somebody to watch without them knowing that this is something they'd like to watch, right? So it's your understanding of the customer. So there is definitely a significant evolution that the ecosystem and even in India needs to go through in terms of tech. We've obviously been doing a significant amount of work in that space. And I think we need to move beyond the pure play kind of a transactional business in terms of I like this show to, oh, I like this show, but this brand's also great. So it's almost like build that correlation between culture, content, and brand. And I think that's going to be an important one, how each of us kind of develop that strategy in 2022.
Yeah, but coming back to the loyalty part of the question, more importantly, do you really see that a person will come to the platform because of experience over content?
So I'm not saying that one is bigger than the other, right? It's always personal to the user. I'm just saying that this will further enhance. I'm not saying that experience or technology replaces content. I think there are reasons in terms of a stack, right? Which will be reasons for which somebody will prefer a particular service just because of the experience being better. To hence watch a show or probably watch that show. There could be two non-exclusive shows on a particular platform. The choice about where you choose to watch it is another interesting one to make, because the experience of that particular platform in terms of some of the softer nuances will probably make that difference. So in a highly competitive market such as that, a lot of the incumbents in the business cannot just purely rely on the fact that I'm producing great content and that should be it. It's also getting more complicated with the number of with frequency capping in terms of concurrent users, with live sports, with a lot of value-added features that launch, right? So the business of OTT is also business of technology, and how we're able to both adopt and adapt to the changes in the evolution is going to be very important for business.
Great. Gaurav, we talked about time being one of the biggest competitors to OTT growth. What's your take on piracy, and how are you combating that?
Piracy is a tricky one. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? There is it's on the piracy side. When we look at it, is it good or is it bad at times when you're starting off from a sampling standpoint, right? Let them sample, let them get used to it, let them come on board. Now that's one thought process. The other thought process is that it's my IP, I've paid for it, right? And spent a lot of money in terms of engaging on that. What am I gonna do? So see, piracy and we've all been there, right? We've seen a huge amount of content. There are songs available for $5. It's not a question of the potential to pay. It's a question of, do people have the propensity to pay for content? because thing being intangible, piracy is not literally taken as a theft. You know, from a, we are the publishers, we take it as a theft if somebody's actually pirating. But the if you look at the user mindset at times, because they're just replicating, making a copy of it, they may not want to, they may not look at it. And it's a, we've seen that in software space, we've seen that in music, we've seen that in movies, and we've seen that across the content. It's going to be an ongoing fight, which is something that we'll have to look at as an industry rather than individual organizations, because it hurts every single one of us, right? So that's and coming to Ali's point on the technology side, and the the solve at the end of the day lies in technology. The more we invest in our technology, in our backend systems, is that's where we can and best share practices amongst each other. That's how we can combat piracy. But it's going to be an ongoing problem. It's not going away anytime soon, for sure.
I think Ali seems to be working on some tech related to piracy, anti-piracy. You want to talk about that?
Too early, Zubin. That was shared in personal confidence. No, but I think there are some very interesting things, right? So essentially, just to give everybody a gist, right, and I'm going to be cryptic for obvious reasons. The fact that you're able to recognize the content both from audio, image, and whatever kind of tools that you use to be able to enable discovery, those are also tools to be able to stop piracy, right? So there's a lot of work going on in terms of what is the right ways to be able to identify licensed content, licensed platforms, and hence kind of identify the source. So there's some interesting work happening there. Again, in addition to what we do from a business standpoint, there's a lot of good kind of quality R&D we also do as a team, and specifically on the technology side. And I think there are some interesting things, and we will be looking at some trial runs probably as early as even 2022.
Very nice. Question again to Gaurav, and maybe even to Abhishek. Where do you see the RBI guidelines for auto renewals impact SVOD subscriptions?
Abhishek, you want to take a shot at it?
See, I have just launched. The impact will happen next year. No, so coming back to the piracy piece, I mean, I'm a free platform.
No, we're talking about the RBI guidelines.
No, I know. No, I know. We are talking about the RBI guidelines, but I'll come back to the piracy piece once and give you a funny piece of information. Even though I'm a free platform, consumers still pirate and watch my content. I don't know why.
Abhishek, maybe they don't like your experience. They like the pirated experience better.
I'll talk to you separately about this. No, I mean, the takeaway that we had is they are doing it because they don't want to see ads. So it's all links back to the SVOD, no ad policy, right? That was what I was trying to say. Coming back to the RBI guideline, as I said, I've just launched an annual pack. This will hit me in next year, so we'll speak when we meet next year. Gaurav, over to you.
Yeah, see, it's a problem not only for us. It's a problem across multiple recurring payments. Specifically, telcos are the ones who are, from a mass perspective, are also getting impacted a lot. It's definitely going to be a challenge in the short term to have people specifically key in their so in other words, an added friction is there in the overall payment process, which in the short term will definitely impact our SVOD users and the user experience, so to speak. And we all know what impact a bad user experience or added friction does to how people look at a particular platform or overall. But the best part of this bad scenario is that we are all in it together across industries. So the user is facing the same issue across board, across all platforms, right? So if I have to pay my Airtel bill, I'm facing the same issue, right? So on and so forth. So it's something which cannot be pinned down to a platform. But yes, in the short term, all of us will definitely see the impact of this, where there might be a slight bit of a higher churn, possibly.
Do you see like more of long-term subscriptions taking shape over smaller duration ones?
It's
Because
any day advisable. More people would want that. I've spoken to a lot of people at a consumer level in our focus groups or on, unofficial kind of a thing as well. They, everybody prefers a longer term rather than a month on month kind of thing, right? And given the kind of price points that we operate at, right, a month on month is anyway not advisable. Most people don't want it anyway. So we anyway see most of our guys coming in on an annual basis. And then to your point, the PVOD, right? The partnership B2B model on SVOD, and majority of everybody's subscriptions are anyway coming via the B2B model as well, right? So those anyway won't get impacted.
true, that's right. Great, yeah. We've had a very good discussion today, and thanks a lot for all your inputs. Just a few closing remarks from each one of you before we wrap up. We'll go in alphabetical order. So we'll go with Abhi first.
One line, one is never enough.
Short and crisp.
if
Short
you
format.
if you have to ask me, we haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg yet. I mean, it is a long way to go.
Ali?
I think there was more than one remark. So no, I think I just want to further emphatically kind of reiterate what Abhishek just said. I think it's early days in the business. Lots is going to change. There's lots changing in terms of structural environment globally, Indian environment. There's going to be a different ecosystem in about a couple of years. The one thing that we are going to see is India definitely kind of leading the charts from a global leader position, because we are innovating, producing, doing everything. So compared to some of the other screen businesses, we will be up the curve, if not ahead of it.
Great. Gaurav?
I'll echo the sentiment there, right? It's we are at infancy, as I said earlier, right? We have a long way to go. Like Abhishek said, Geo opened the floodgates for us, right? What's the next floodgate that's going to open up? Is it going to be the Google Geo phone, which is going to convert a majority of 2G folks into 4G, right? Possibly, and that's the hope, right? That's going to just expand the market and our addressable market multifold, both from an AVOD as well as an SVOD perspective, right? As our GDP grows, the propensity to pay for content would go higher. And at the same time, what are the other innovations from a tech standpoint are coming in from a social and a commerce standpoint that are going to get integrated into the OTT space? So that's what I would look forward to, that, what am I going to integrate further into my experience to bring in, to become the one platform for everything.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we've had a really good session. I hope everyone's enjoyed it.